Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the New Beyond. I'm your host, Judith Rich. It's wonderful to be with you again here in 2025, whenever you're joining us. I'm delighted to introduce my guest this week and share some time with him as he shares with us what he's up to in his life. My guest is well known here in the New Beyond on this podcast. He has been with us a couple of times in previous seasons, so I couldn't let another season go by without inviting Aaron Glassman back to
Hmm.
be with us. Aaron experienced what he refers to as his awakening, get this, while inside the king's chamber, where? Of the Great Pyramid of Egypt. Yeah. How do you like that for starters? And so that's what he's all about. He's all about the awakening, and he's going to be telling us more about that in this episode uh, today, I'm sure. He has been teaching, writing, and speaking for only 20 years about the fusion of science and spirituality and creating spiritual technologies that assist people in awakening to their own creative power. In addition to facilitating individuals and groups all over the world, Aaron has been a serial entrepreneur, a musician, and ready for this, food activist. He has teamed up with his wife, Anahita, to lead groups of visionary women and men to support them in bringing their creative visions into the world for maximum planetary impact. Aaron has worked with and shared the stage with Marianne Williamson, Barbara Marks Hubbard, and Michael Beckwith. And he lives in the San Diego area with his wife, Anahita, and their two beautiful boys, Atlantis and Orion. Don't you just love their names? Welcome, Aaron. I'm so happy to have you back in the.
Well, so my joy. Every time we talk, we're like, maybe we should do a series. So it's just going to be a series drawn out over a
Yes.
decade.
I think so. I like that idea very much. Let's
Let's
calendar a
do that.
series.
Yes.
Yeah, so we were chatting just a little bit before we started, before I hit record, and we were discussing like what should we call this episode? And what came out, which just was like a total zinger for me, was holding the frequency of joy amidst chaotic times. Holding the frequency of joy. Go. You've got the mic.
Yeah.
Talk about that,
What
and
is this
we'll see
guy?
where that leads us.
Crazy? What is this guy crazy? How do you hold the frequency of joy when the world seems to be so chaotic and all of that? But
Yeah.
you know what I was remembering? I'm dating myself here, but when I was going to elementary school, my mother was a teacher, and so I got to go for free to a private school, through the elementary grades. And I remember all through the school, it was a big campus. Every building in specific locations had signs that said fallout shelter. And of course you remember, everywhere you would go,
Yes.
alleyways in the cities or whatever, there were these signs that said fallout shelter.
Where was this? Or is this New
This is
York?
back east. Yeah, this was back east. This was in Connecticut.
Okay.
But I mean, I don't think it was limited just to the East Coast. Maybe it was, but and as a kid, you don't know what that really means, fallout shelter. But what a thing to kind of grow up with is like there's a fallout. Well, what's a fallout? Well, if there's a nuclear attack, the radiation will have a fallout. It's really going to kill everything and everyone, but go downstairs into the basement.
Like that's going to protect you
Yes,
from
where
the
you can
radiation.
die, below ground. But and of course, I remember Vietnam. I remember, the turmoil in the streets, seeing those images on TV. And I was really just understanding, like, I think there's always the opportunity for us, humanity, to focus in on fear. and the worst case scenario and all of the bad things that are taking place on the planet.
And there's
There's,
plenty of material around that right now.
well,
Yes?
yeah, I mean, but that came about because I don't think it's any more in the sense than it has been. This is the difference, is we are feeling it. We're being called to feel it more at
Hmm.
this time, at
Hmm.
this stage of our evolution. And that is because there is an acceleration taking place on the planet.
Hmm.
The planet is literally speeding up as it begins to come more upright on its axis. It's increasing its velocity in its rotation, and this has been measured with the Schumann resonance and all of that. They're seeing peaks like they never have before. There is an acceleration of frequency that is taking place that is heightening our emotions, that is heightening our sensitivity. And I don't think, awful things taking place on the planet or this ominous, disastrous outcome has been absent since we've had media. I just think we are being called to feel it at a much deeper level and to come into the frequency of joy in the heart in order for us to really evolve. Because that's what I'm all about is evolution. Evolution of consciousness, evolution of our spiritual soul growth, evolution of our health and our vibration, all of that.
Can I just pop a question in here?
Please.
So, evolution of consciousness versus transformation of consciousness. Is there a difference between evolution and transformation?
Ah, what a great question. Yeah, I think we can transform our consciousness, and that would be like an intentional choice, and that's powerful,
Mm-hmm.
is that I'm going to really begin to, become introspective. I'm going to do emotional work. I'm going to do shadow work. I'm going to really consciously make a choice to transform old ways of thinking and old patterns that no longer serve me.
Mm-hmm.
An evolution of consciousness is a collective, I believe, a collective predetermined destiny that we're all being called to align and calibrate with. Evolution is inevitable. How we receive the evolution, I believe, is what we get to choose. But the evolution of humanity, the evolution of consciousness, the raising of our consciousness is inevitable. I can't say exactly how it'll unfold and how it'll be, but it's a predestined, predetermined, because everything in the universe is acting like a seed. And that seed then begins to unfold into its preordained, predestined destiny. And I believe it's in a state of that evolution that we get to calibrate and align to that frequency of evolution so that we have, the power of that seed, if you will, right? That universal seed that is inevitably going to expand and grow really come in to us. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so we are now experiencing in the year that we're recording this, which is 2025. We are now smack dab square in the middle of Pluto in Aquarius for the next 20 years.
Yeah.
And Pluto is that planet of death and rebirth, disruption, change, and transformation. So when we talk about chaotic times, we're like in the depth of chaotic times. And so, how do we navigate this time and and transform, evolve into the frequency of joy? I don't know if I phrase that, if I
Yeah.
language that question properly.
Yeah.
Correct me if I got that wrong.
You know about reframing. So I reframe, yes, chaos is an interpretation of what is taking place outside of us in the external world. I believe, and science believes, that what is taking place internally is what we experience and create outside of us. Yes? So, what if chaos was really, yeah, like you said, a birthing? You know, there's nothing neat and
Nothing also.
tidy about birthing.
Yeah, right.
Having witnessed both of my children being born, I mean, it is a supernatural experience. I can't say what it's like really for the woman, but there is order to what seems to be chaotic in the time
Mhm,
of giving birth.
mhm,
There is stillness in the chaos of birth. Like, if you really are doing it, we did home birth, so I'm saying there is a state and a way of being in that birthing process that you're called to, certainly as a partner to the woman who's giving birth, to really hold this presence and stillness and focus and all of that. And I think that's all part of what we are being called to. And that is where our joy gets to be activated, because when we can experience this focus, stillness, connection to the heart, even in what appears to be chaotic times or chaos, we experience not only great power, but we actually experience a joy from that, and a deep peace comes with that joy.
So then our job, what I'm hearing you say, Aaron, is that our job as human beings occupying the planet, this in this particular moment in our collective history, is to be the space of stillness and silence that can hold the collective experience of chaos, and through that experience connect with the joy. Actually, it's kind of a way of being, of keeping peace amidst the chaos as we hold that space. Is that anywhere close to what you're saying?
Yeah. So when we want to activate higher states of consciousness, when we want to embody higher ways of being, we're unifying masculine and feminine energetic. We're unifying what appears to be contrast and opposites into oneness, into wholeness. The only place that that can happen, the only vibration that we can generate to hold that pillar of masculine stillness and strength, inner strength, and yet an open heart, one that is inclusive and connected, is through the heart center. The heart center is the one resonance chamber that sources frequency and vibration of joy, of the feeling of peace, and all of that. And we experience that is activated when we can come into an inner stillness, and that in turn will open and inform the feminine to be able to open and expand the heart center, its energy, its magnetism, its field, right? So that there is a state of peace, of connection, of unity. And that is a practice, and that is a way of being. And yeah, and that's everything that I really teach and speak about.
And this is, I think, a perfect expression of this Aquarian age that we are in. As Aquarius is ruled by the planet Uranus, which is the union of masculine and feminine.
Yeah.
So energetically, that planet, that one of the largest, most outer planets in our solar system, represents that union of opposites,
Yes.
masculine and feminine. And so we've got all these planetary energies working to support
Yes.
exactly what you just said.
The universe is conspiring for our highest good. Yeah.
Yeah.
And and we use terms like masculine and feminine, and those are, human
Mhm.
terminology that supports us in having an understanding, but basically it's coming out of separation. Our
Mm,
awakening, our activation as human beings right now is coming into the wholeness and releasing the ideas of separation. Separation is the
yeah.
chaos, Judith.
Yes. Yeah.
Separation of me and other, of them and me, is where the chaos is born from.
Yeah.
And until we really, and it's a lifelong process. It's a lifelong process because we're all human and we're all meant to forget, but as soon as that finger begins pointing outward, there's three fingers pointing back at us. And it's because our consciousness is is whole. It is like creation is whole. Creation is this tapestry of interconnectedness, and science proves it through the unified field, through quantum mechanics, through what I do to one atom here can affect another atom in a whole other universe.
Yeah.
And it happens immediately, not with any time delay. We are in an interconnected net of energy that is never separate. And the more we come out of separation, left, right, and black, white, and, you know, whatever, we then are coming into a fertile space inside of us to really generate that joy amongst the appearance of chaos.
So you're doing something amazing and wonderful and interesting to support people attaining this state. Tell
Yeah.
us about what you're up to.
I've always been up to this, through teaching science and spirituality, unifying left and right brain, right? Uh, Bringing that unification is what opens up the heart space. Uh, but I think you're referring to, for 23 years, I've been traveling to a very specific place on the
Yes.
planet.
Yes.
And I've traveled over the world and I've gone to every power center of the world, including the Great Pyramid of Egypt.
Yes.
And I have continually returned for 23 years to this place that is referred to as the heart center of the planet. And that is Avalon, that is Glastonbury, UK. And that isn't like a woo-woo, like cute terminology. It's called and referred to as the heart center of the planet because it's been measured to be the most magnetic place on the planet, even more so than the pyramids of Giza, even the Giza Plateau. And the heart is this resonance chamber for frequency and vibration, which creates a magnetic field. And that magnetism is what empowers us. That magnetism is what attracts the people, places, and things that vibrationally align to our deepest heart's desire when we are really in an expanded experience of the heart. And that is what Avalon does and supports. So I lead retreats to Glastonbury and Avalon to take people to the heart center where they have this amplified, really expanded experience of who and what they are and what they want to create. Everybody, like we set out on intention and everybody receives their intention and they create a real foundational way of being when they're there to bring back to their daily life. So this is one of my greatest joys is bringing people to Avalon, to Glastonbury, and to have an experience of the heart center there.
I'm feeling the vibration of that in my chest as we speak.
Yeah. So it's what, of course, Stonehenge. Everyone knows Stonehenge, and Stonehenge is an hour away from Glastonbury. And when I say Glastonbury, so many people think the Glastonbury Festival or whatever.
Yeah.
But no, Avalon, spiritual pilgrims have gone
Mhm.
there forever, and pilgrim there. And there's so many unique things. But the southwest portion of England, you have Stonehenge, you have Avebury, that is a little further north northwest, I believe. Avebury, the largest stone circle in the world, connects to Stonehenge energetically, and then that energetic lines go to Glastonbury where they converge at the Glastonbury Tor, which is this huge mound. It's this huge hill in what is called the Somerset Levels. And it's called the Somerset Levels because it's like all this flat farmland, and then all of a sudden there's this huge, pregnant, mound that is the interconnection of what is known as the Michael and Mary energy ley lines. And these ley lines, right, when masculine and feminine converge, it creates this vortex, it creates this magnetism, it creates this opening. And people have been going there to experience the healing and the transformation and the connection that is experienced when you just arrive there. And those ley lines have been, through magnetism and tracking, have been traced to the entrance of, guess what? The Great Pyramid of Egypt.
Oh, stop.
Yeah. Yes.
Really?
Yes. Yeah.
Wow.
So there's a huge connection between that part of the world, Israel and Egypt, and Glastonbury, UK. Because if we go into, the legends and Christianity, it is said that Joseph of Arimathea, who, said to be Jesus's uncle, who was a tin trader, came to Glastonbury with the Grail cup, poured the blood of Christ into this spring, and it became rich in iron and healing waters. So in Glastonbury, there are two sacred healing springs, the red and white spring, the masculine and the feminine, that come up and are meant to converge above ground, and they flow throughout the Avalon Valley. And these waters are so deep in the earth, they can't find the origins of them. They pump out thousands of gallons of healing water every day, and they can usually locate the aquifer or the spring head or whatever, and they can't with these mysterious sacred waters. So where you have great energy, right, where you have the heart, right? And
Yeah.
all of these lines, they need to be conducted with fluid energy. Water conducts energy. So these are two powerful healing springs. And I'm so connected to the water there, so much so that when I experienced the White Spring, it's all covered in a building that was built to pump the water in the time of cholera, to bring it into the town, but I was physically ill by this building being there. And there was another American who had the same experience. We wound up buying the cottage that sits atop of the White Spring. And one day the vision is to restore the whole area so that water flows naturally through the ground to the top, to the sun. You experience it right now in a beautiful kind of this building that's been set up. It's sacred, springs, but it needs to come out above ground into the light.
So you actually bought the building.
Yeah. She is amazing. We both had the same vision. We
Wow.
both heard about it going up for sale at the same time, and I was like, I'll do whatever I have to do to secure this so that one day that part of the spring could be restored to more of a natural state. So I'm very connected to this part of the world. This is my soul's home. This is where I need to return to. And bringing people is the vibration of joy in the appearance of chaos.
In the appearance of chaos. I like that. I like.
Yes.
And you've been doing this for a very long time in different ways, in different places throughout the world, haven't you?
Taking people?
Either taking people or on your own pilgrimage. I mean, you
Oh,
are
yeah.
basically a pilgrim.
Yeah.
I
Yeah. I
remember
know
the
you.
very first time, speaking of, I know, you've been on the stage with Marianne Williamson. I did a trip to India with Marianne Williamson and, a group of other people. And I remember it was her first time in India.
Mm,
And she shared with us We are not here as tourists. We
Mm,
are here as pilgrims.
mm,
And that places a totally different context on our visitation to that space. It puts it in a
right? Yeah.
sacred context. And I'm sure that you do that with your people as well, yes?
Yeah, I say this is, this isn't a vacation. This is a transformation, right? We're not looking to vacate self. We're actually looking to deepen into self. And that definitely calls forward a certain caliber of people that are really,
Yeah.
they're
Oh yeah.
really
Oh yeah.
interested in not like,
Yeah.
just going unconscious and vacating
Right.
who and what they are.
Right.
What happens in Avalon does not stay in Avalon. I just said that. That's a good one. I'll put that in there.
That's good. That's
Uh,
good. Put that in
yeah,
your marketing
I
materials.
sure will. And thank
So
God
when
it
is this
doesn't. Yeah.
when is this next trip you're doing?
This next one is in May, May 12th through the 17th. And, you know, it's packed with, we're going to have beautiful ceremony together. We're going to experience all of the special spots in Glastonbury, which is the springs and the Abbey, Glastonbury Abbey, which is a real another little vortex. It's the first place where it is said that the teachings of Yeshua were actually like given. It wasn't Christianity, it was the essence of those teachings. But to just to reconnect that there's a strong connection between the Middle East and Glastonbury. There is something called the Thorn Weary All Hill that has this certain thorn tree on it. Okay, get this. This tree only grows in the Middle East, and they were found in Glastonbury. And the way in which they're found is basically you can take like a limb of a tree and plant it in the ground, and it will grow. And it blossoms on December 25th.
Oh, stop.
No, I'm not. Yeah. So they don't understand how, well, they do understand. I mean, there's just this ley line connection
Yeah.
that souls are drawn to, magnetized to follow. And there's a big connection, some say, Druid, Jew, like there's this energetic connection to both of those places because of its power. But yeah, May 12th through the 17th, we get to see all the special spots in Glastonbury, but we also go down to a place called St. Nectan's Glen. Well, so if you've ever like dreamed of what a fairy forest feels like, if you want to talk about the vibration of joy, you go into this forest, like the greenest place with the rivers and into this waterfall glen, and you just watch everybody's vibration raise incredibly. And then we go to Tintagel, which is the birthplace of King Arthur, and it's this beautiful cove with the ocean and an ocean cave called Merlin's Cave. And it is said that when you enter into Merlin's Cave and make a wish, it is guaranteed to be granted to you. So all of the magic and the folklore and the power of this place we experience. They have a choice to also add on Stonehenge if they like,
Okay.
and it's a beautiful setting. We stay on this complex of English cottages and some new buildings that is right at the gateway of Avalon. It's right at the entrance, and we get to just walk right from there all the way up to the vortex.
How uh how strenuous is this trip? I'm thinking of, let's say, someone like myself who's not 20 years old.
Yeah.
How strenuous is it?
Yeah, I mean, I I know you're in. I've had plenty of women in and about your age do it, but there is walking involved. Going up the tour is a climb. I think it's 1,800 feet up. There's steps. It's not like there's
Mhm.
steps, and people just take their time and do it. But I will say, yes, there is an element and component to being if you have really, really bad knees and really bad ankles and all of that stuff, you may find some of it to be a little challenging. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, that's
Yeah.
what I'm thinking.
Yeah.
That's what I'm
And then
dealing with.
I put them on my back.
Yeah, you may have to carry me up.
If you said, get me up there, I'll get you up there. I'll get you up there.
Amazing.
Yeah.
So you as pilgrim
Yeah.
in the world, I heard a Facebook Live, I listened to a Facebook Live that you did recently,
Hmm.
sharing an experience that you had in the Himalayas while walking on a trail. And I thought, oh my God, I've got to get Aaron on the podcast and have him tell that story.
Yeah. Yeah.
Could you share
Absolutely.
it? Yeah.
Absolutely. It was a unexpected, profound awakening. I felt called to go to I just listen. I just listen. When we do have a practice of stillness, you get communicated to, and everything in my body was saying it's time to go to India. It's time to go to India. I'd never been to India before. But it wasn't just India that I was called to. I was called to go to Kashmir, which, for anybody who knows, Kashmir is mostly Muslim now. Not mostly, but pretty much 99% Muslim. And my experience was just to go to Kashmir and then hike up from that area up the Himalayas towards the Tibet into Tibet. So I didn't know very much. I I hadn't trained. I hadn't done any I just was being called to India and I followed the impulse. And so I arranged with this kind of tour guide company to take me into the Himalayas. They ask you, well, how long do you want to hike for? Would you like to see this part? Would you like to see these waterfall or whatever? And this and whatever. And I said, he said, how long? And I just knew the length of my trip. And I said, I'll go there and there, and can I get that done in 3 days? And he goes, sure. Everything's sure, no problem, you know. So I started up at about probably 12,000 feet already, maybe 11,000 something.
Up there.
And yeah, and you start just walking. I had two guides. One, was with the horse, taking all our camping equipment, and the other one, is kind of leading the way with a backpack, and I'm having a backpack, and we start our climb. And we're hiking, and I'm expecting like to start huffing and puffing, in a moment. I mean, I'm in good shape, but I'm not in excellent, perfect shape. So I would say we did that first day probably about 6 hours, and we stopped, and I'm like, wow, I think I did pretty good. Nothing massive. I don't know how much we climbed that first day. Um, but there I am in the Himalayas on my tent, and we're eating rice and dal, and everything was great. Second day comes, and we get up early, and he's like, today's going to be a full day. It's going to be a whole day. And we're doing it, and I'm expecting once again to really be struggling at some point. And I'm managing it. I'm managing it. They're always several clicks ahead, leading the way, keeping the momentum, because it was in end of October, I believe, and there was always a chance of starting to get major snow.
Yeah.
And you never know. The winds could change, and they didn't want us to get snowed in. So we had to keep moving. Anyway, so day two, I'm proud of myself. I believe we're at like 16,000 feet. And yet we were just still going up and up and up. And I go, so tomorrow, is day three. He goes, yeah, it's a big day. I'm like, bigger than this? Like, I just spent the whole day, like we'd leave at 6 in the morning and stop at
Wow.
5:30 at night or whatever, right? And I was like, bigger than today. It's like, yeah, we go much bigger. And so I'm like, okay. And we left at the crack of dawn. One horse has to go back because the horse can no longer do the trail. And we're going, and they're moving faster than day two. And I'm trying to keep up. And anyway, at least 6 hours go by, and I realize we're still going up. We're still going up, and they're way ahead. And I'm starting to want, like, what is going on here? Like, I'm not a trekker. Like, this could be dangerous. Like, I'm at 18,000 feet by now, maybe 17,000. So anyway, this is going on and they keep going forward and I run and I stop them and I go, what's going on? We're still going up. I mean, shouldn't we be making our way down somewhere where this guy's supposed to be picking us up? And they go, yeah, yeah, we're getting there. And they wouldn't say anything. And they could see I was starting to get agitated. And anyway, another few hours go by and I stop and I start going crazy on them. I'm like, what is going on? Because we haven't started going down together. Because I'm sorry. I'm sorry. He kind of condensed basically a 5-day trek into 3 days so you could see this and get there in the time that you said you had. And I asked him not to do it, but he did it. And we're having to do way more than normal. And I started to go like into this rage, Judith. Like I'm a pretty, I definitely have a connection to anger and the beauty of it, but I'm in this like rage. Like, how dare this guy like jeopardize my life without telling me, right? How dare he, like, this is craziness. And I was exhausted at this point. I mean, I was really exhausted. And they're saying we still have a ways to go, and it's like early afternoon. And I'm seeing like these rocks that I've got to climb and all of this stuff. And I really just had this rage take over. And I was lifting up these heavy rocks and I was throwing them and I'm screaming and all of this rage was coming out of me. And it wasn't just about this. This was rage on a primal level. This was a childhood rage. This was
Mm,
past live rage. This was
mm,
everything was like pouring out, and I wanted to kill this guy. I really wanted
mm,
to kill this guy. And I am a man of peace, but this is what was coming up.
mm,
And when this rage happened and I got so angry, something took over me. And all of a sudden, I had all of this energy. And it wasn't logical, right? But I had released something so powerful. These guys were a good, 300 yards ahead of me. And I started running. I started running and I started running and I ran past the guides and I started to run, just following this trail, running. And they didn't know what was going on. And I started running until I couldn't run anymore. And they caught up with me and and then I was done. Like I was like I my physically I don't think I could have done it anymore. And we were right in front of a house with a horse and they asked if we could rent their horse to take me into town. It was about another hour.
oh,
And they put me on a horse and I hiked down. And what happened in that time, I'm still got anger and I thought when I see this guy, I'm going to punch him in the face. Like because, but what was taking over was actually when I did see him, this heart opened up and this love for him actually opened up and I didn't expect it. And I just gave him the biggest hug. He
oh,
was prepared for me to hit him because
you
he could,
punched it.
I think he had heard, I don't know how, maybe when we got down closer to town, they had signal. And I felt this elation. I felt incredibly high. And what happened was that primal rage, that fire got transmuted
Mm,
into a higher frequency,
mm.
into joy by releasing it and letting it be released, giving permission to go to that place, transmutes this fire, primal rage into presence of the heart, into love. And I gave him a big hug and I thanked him.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
Wow.
that's a true
Wow.
story. Yeah.
Powerful.
And the
So
first time, and I remember after that, I got into a cab that was taking me into the next town to make my way in towards Tibet. It was the first time I saw the Dalai Lama. I saw a Buddha. I hadn't been in a Hindu temple. It was all, Muslim. And I just got in and there was the Buddha. I just thought that was pretty beautiful. So, yeah,
that's an amazing story. I know you have you have albums of these kind of amazing
I
stories.
do.
As you're sharing this story about transmuting the rage into a higher frequency,
Yeah.
I'm curious, in your work with people, when you work with people, is this part of what you experience people need to do is give themselves permission to feel and express and experience this rage or grief or the ungrieved
Yeah.
aspects of their anger or sadness or loss or whatever it is? Because I think a lot of people are carrying a lot of this.
Yeah. When we suppress it, I mean, it's just funny I tell you this because I know you know all this, but
But you're
yeah,
telling the listeners,
of
so
course, I know. Um, but when we oppress the rage, when we bring our judgment to the rage, because so many of us were brought up like, you don't have permission to get angry. You're the
oh
child.
yeah,
You don't get to be angry with me. You are to be seen and not heard. Like
yeah,
that was a generation. That was my generation of child parent book. Like so when that is suppressed over certain many years, it becomes depressed. The energy inside of you, your emotional body gets depressed,
hmm
and it depression then suppresses the
hmm
emotion. When
hmm
there is freedom and permission to allow the full spectrum of the emotional body to be felt and to be experienced, to be released, to be in dance with, co-creation with, there is tremendous joy, tremendous heart experience of expansion. So yes, my my position is to create safe containers for people to have a authentic expression of how they want to release, feel, express. And we do that in our sacred ceremony evenings, which is part of the journey in
you at
Avalon.
Avalon.
Right, if that comes up.
Yeah,
Not that that
okay,
doesn't come up for everybody,
okay,
but
okay.
but
I'm
the
just
beautiful
thinking
thing
about
is
that.
there's no separation. So when
Yeah,
it does get expressed through one, it's actually healing
yeah,
everyone.
yeah,
And that is the beauty of to
yeah.
witness that. Yeah.
Wow,
Yeah.
beautiful, beautiful. I'm just thinking about the journey from rage to joy.
Yeah.
What a
I had never experienced anything like that. This,
wow.
I mean, I was elated. I was higher than I've almost ever been, and it came from going to the depths.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah.
Well, there is so much here, Aaron.
I don't even know what
Listeners,
time. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
listeners, you want to experience this man, this beautiful being. Get yourself now. How can people get a hold of you, Aaron? How can they find out more about this upcoming trip to Avalon and whatever else you're doing?
Yeah, well, I can share with you the link
Okay, we'll
for
put it in the
the
show notes.
Avalon page. We'll
Okay.
put that in the pages. They can find me, Aaron Glassman, in Facebook, and there's always postings about the journey. But I'll just say in closing, is that we are being powerfully called into our presence, into our hearts at this time. And I mean, this isn't fantastical thinking. We are being called to become the embodiment of our divine selves in human
Mm,
form. And that happens when we have this real experience and mastery of being in the heart. And whether it's with me or with not, surround yourself with people who want to have that experience
yes.
and journey to places that amplify and support that. Of,
Yes.
of course, there's beautiful places and other places you can have those experiences. But I have been to all of those places, and I have found this Avalon is the most amazing opportunity to have that experience in.
Wow, that's a high calling, my friend.
Yeah, yeah.
So listeners, here's your person right here. Thank you
And
so much, Aaron, for being with us.
I
As
love you. Thank you,
always,
Judith.
I love
Thank
you
you.
too, and I know that we'll do many more of these episodes as time goes by. And whether I make it on this trip to Avalon or not, I'll certainly be there with you all in spirit. I think it sounds amazing. So I'm
It
open to a
is.
little discovery conversation with you about this.
Yeah, absolutely, sweetheart.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Thank you so much for having me back.
Thank you so much. So, listeners, thanks for spending time with us in the new beyond. Until we meet again, many blessings.